Talk about jumping in at the deep end. This is like the friggin' Mariana Trench over here. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video. Happy Pride Month. It is, at the time of filming, the beginning of June, so you know what time it is. It's time again for my Pride Month reading vlog, in which I try and read as many books with LGBTQ plus representation as I physically can. This is my 4th year doing this challenge, which is really cool, and I'm always so excited to do this reading vlog because I get to discover so many amazing books from lots of different genres. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm not going to continue rambling for too long because I feel like this one is kind of self-explanatory, and we also have a lot to get through this month. I have a pretty long and ambitious TBR with quite a few new releases, quite a few arcs, a few books that are on my list of 26 books I want to read in 2026, which I will try and prioritize as much as I can. And yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun. And actually, I have already finished my first book that I want to talk about in this video. So yeah, let's talk about that now. It's this one. This is The Open Era by Edward Schmidt. It comes out literally tomorrow at the time of filming. So yeah, we'll already be well and truly out in the world by the time this video is posted. I am in love with this arc. I love the colors. I love the design, the fact that the front of this book says this summer is serving heated rivalry. Thank you so much, Penguin, for sending me this proof that I got to read and review. Always really cool to get a brief from a publisher. Yeah, it makes me very happy. And honestly, this was the perfect book to kick off Pride Month and tennis season this summer. I am quite a big fan of tennis. Um, it's really kind of the only sport that I will actually like sit down and watch and like become engrossed in. I grew up playing tennis, would you believe? So I feel like I know quite a lot about the sport, and yeah, so this was very exciting to kind of have a tennis sports romance. It's kind of pitched as a nod to heated rivalry, I guess. So in this book, we are following Austin, who is a breakout star of tennis. He is at his first US Open. He he's a bit of a nobody in terms of like his skill, his ability. Um, his kind of he hasn't really beaten any kind of big stars yet, but he is the first openly gay male player to qualify for a Grand Slam, to qualify for the US Open, which kind of catapults him into fame, really, because there's a lot of chatter about his sexuality. Not that he really wants people to be making his sexuality like a massive point of conversation. He kind of would rather they talk about his like actual tennis skills, you know. But yeah, so he's at his first US Open, and there is this chance meeting he has with world number two, a guy called Diego. And because of this chance meeting, they kind of grow into a friendship. They grow rather close, become something more than friends, maybe. And the book's told over kind of the 2 weeks of the tournament, the US Open. So it's not like a massive amount of time. It's definitely not as much time as like heated rivalry, which is set over years and years of this very kind of drawn out rivalry between two star players. But the kind of closer timescale does mean that there is quite a bit of tension about like who's going to win the match, etc., etc., like what's going to happen. And I did think that the scenes with the scenes about the tennis matches were the real highlight of the book. I really really enjoyed those. That might just be because I like watching tennis. Like people who are less interested in tennis and more interested in like the romance of a sports romance, that might not interest them as much, but I was here for the tennis, I'm not gonna lie. So those scenes were tense and thrilling. It was almost like you were kind of on the court with the players. Actually, it was kind of more like you were inside of Austin's head because you really got a good idea of like the strategy behind the game, The fact that tennis is just as much like a psychological mind game as it is a physical game. You really have to like psych the other players out um, in order to get the upper hand on the court. And also along the same lines as getting into Austen's head, I really liked the mental health representation in this book. The fact that it discusses mental health, especially anxiety, in such an authentic way. Austen suffers from generalized anxiety disorder. He experiences panic attacks when he's under stress, which is quite often if you are in like your first Grand Slam. And yeah, I really appreciated that representation and the message that while Austen's anxiety doesn't define him, it is still a big part of his life. Um, it's quite a debilitating part of his life, and he does eventually benefit from seeking support for it, from people who care about him, his family, his friends, a therapist as well. There's the message that like therapy is a good thing to have, even if you're like not suffering from a mental illness, even if you're just like going through something kind of stressful and you want to like talk through your feelings with a professional, like therapy is a good thing. I think my issue with this book was that I was expecting something slightly different because of how the book was marketed. Like, it was sold to me as like heated rivalry, but for tennis. I mean, the fact that heated rivalry is mentioned on the front of this proof, and it's also mentioned on the back of this proof. It says all the tension of romance you loved in heated rivalry, but now it's on the tennis court. So I was expecting a heated rivalry, but there kind of wasn't really any rivalry, and it certainly wasn't particularly heated. I think I was expecting a bit more animosity between the two romantic leads, because like they pretty much immediately jump into this friendship. They're very civil with each other. Um, like they're nice to each other, and again, in terms of like the difference in their rankings, you have like world number 200 and something, Austen, and then you have world number 2, Diego. Like, again, there's still not that kind of, I guess it's such a difference in rankings that there isn't kind of that drawn out rivalry where there's a lot of tension over, who's going to win this time. Um, you know? I think for me, what I got was more of like a friends to lovers dynamic rather than a rivals to lovers dynamic. And this is the thing when you have this massive like pop culture moment, and like in the publishing world, it takes a good couple of years for a book to like make its way into the real world, especially like a debut book like this one. So like this book definitely existed before heated rivalry like got big, as a TV series, not as a book. What I'm saying is that like this book was probably written like completely unrelated to heated rivalry, and then it's just because of this massive like pop culture phenomenon, it's just kind of, it's used as like a marketing tactic to get people who are fans of heated rivalry also interested in this book. But that can sometimes lead to disappointments when fans of heated rivalry read this book and realize that it's actually quite different to heated rivalry. Take a drink every single time I say heated rivalry. Comparing a book to a current pop culture moment is a very common and pretty effective marketing tactic. I mean, it got me interested in this book for sure. But yeah, it can sometimes lead to disappointment when readers realize that it's not quite what they're expecting. And for me, like I'm not disappointed. I'm definitely not disappointed because I still enjoyed this book. It was just something that I noticed, that it is actually pretty different to heated rivalry. Like, the only real similarity is that it's a sports romance and it's a queer sports romance. And that's about it. So, yeah, any heated rivalry fans who are kind of thinking of reading this because they love heated rivalry and they want something that is very similar to heated rivalry. This isn't going to be that kind of book. That said, it's still a fun romance. It's a sweet romance. I enjoyed the book. I definitely enjoyed the book and I would recommend it. Like there's plenty of nuance and discussion of mental health and queer experience and representation in sport. Like, it's a good book. Not quite what I was expecting, but it's a good book. I'm not disappointed. I think this is more just like a general criticism of publishing to kind of jump onto a pop culture trend and try to use it as like a way to push certain books, even if they're like only very tenuously linked to that pop culture moment, you know? Anyway, I have rambled for long enough. This is The Open Era by Edward Schmidt. It's going to be out now by the time this video is uploaded. So, yeah, go and read it. I am also about halfway through reading The Heirs by Frida Abike. It's another proof that I got. I got this one at Yalc, actually, which was really, really exciting. Yeah, so I'm currently about halfway through, loving it so far. I think it's so good, so exciting. Um, yeah, so at some point in the near future, next couple of days, I'll probably finish this and then I will let you know my final thoughts. And yeah, I have just started another arc. I did say I had a lot of arcs to read this month. An ebook arc of B. Fitzgerald's new book that's coming out next month. It's called Better the Revenge. It's another kind of showbiz related summer thriller, which is very cool. I'm literally like 10 pages into that one, so no real thoughts as of yet. But again, once I finish it, I will let you know. And yeah, I'm sure I will see you pretty soon for another update. Hello, I'm back and I have finished another book. So, yesterday I finished The Heirs by Frida Abike. This is another proof. I got this one at Yalc last year, and I don't know why I put this off for so long because I've been wanting to read it for such a long time, but I did. I guess I was just like savoring it. I don't know. So Frida Abike wrote Ace of Spades and Where Sleeping Girls Lie, and I loved both those books. So this is a hotly anticipated release for me, and I gotta say, it does not disappoint. So we are following 5 kids who were adopted by this genius billionaire called Leontes Button, and they were brought up under this ruthless kind of method training scheme dubbed the Button Method, with the aim of turning them into child prodigies in various different disciplines. And fast forward 16 odd years, they are teenagers about to become adults. They're suffering from intense burnout and a lot of baggage, and that manifests in various different ways. They're just generally not having a great time, I gotta say. And when we open on this book, there's been a murder. Leontes Button, the billionaire father, has been killed. And the rest of the book is spent looking at the fallout of that murder, as well as flashing back to the events leading up to that moment, not only kind of the day of, the night of, but also some other significant events that happened in the children's lives over the years that kind of made them the people that they are today. This guy, Leontes Button, has a lot of enemies. Not just the children, who have a very complicated relationship with him because they crave his approval, they crave his validation, they love him, but at the same time, they really resent him for bringing them up under this ruthless Button method. But aside from them, like, he also has a lot of other enemies. because he just wasn't a great guy. So literally anyone could have killed him, and we just got to work out how it happened. Look, I love Frida BK Mire's books for various reasons. The first reason is because of the characters. I think she does such a fantastic job of creating a very large cast of characters that are all very different, very diverse, but are also fleshed out and well written. This is something I noticed when I read Where Sleeping Girls Lie, which is another book that kind of it's told from the perspective of one single person, but it does have a big cast of supporting characters who are all very well written. This one kind of takes it a step further because you have the five prodigies, um, who are all really great characters. But then you also have like other people. You have their partners, their exes, their situationships, childhood friends, staff members. You have like a lot of characters, and they're all like really fleshed out with their own kind of desires and wants and motives and flaws. And also, like, the book is told in like some of it's told in like a third person omniscient, kind of looking down on the situation and knowing everything, but not like necessarily revealing it all to us. But then a lot of it is also told from third person close perspective, um, from the point of views of like various people, kind of alternating between a lot of different characters. So you get a glimpse into the psyches of so many different characters, which really kind of brings you into their heads and gives you better insight into what what they want, what they need, what's wrong with them. I think that is done really, really well. Um, you do kind of connect with a lot of the characters. The five kids, especially, because as I said, they have a lot of baggage. For me personally, I think my favorite character is probably Octavius, who is the music prodigy. Um, like by coincidence, complete coincidence, his proof was the proof that I picked up at Yalk. Um, all of the proofs have like little cutouts here that are color coded, to kind of refer to each one of the prodigies, and I got the one with the little violin, uh, the neck of the violin on it, and that refers to Octavius, the maestro. And yeah, he just happened to be my favorite character when I read the book, because he is messed up. He's not having a good time, and I think I also kind of related to him because I was a little bit not on the same level as him, but like I was a little bit of a prodigy in terms of music. When I was growing up, I was like the kid that could sing, basically. And also, and like this is the same as in her other books, I just love how effortlessly diverse the cast of characters is in this book. Like, in terms of race and nationality, all five of the prodigies are like adopted from different parts of the world. So like they all come from different places, they're all different races and nationalities, but they grew up under this one roof in New York. Um, and also like in terms of sexuality, like everyone is queer, everyone's gay, and it's a great time. The other thing I really love about Frida BK Mire's books is the fact that she doesn't underestimate the intelligence of her readers, despite her books being young adult. Like, I do find very often when I'm reading a young adult book, stuff is kind of spoon fed to you. Things are kind of over explained. A lot of words are used to kind of hammer home a message or something like that. And I do get that like it's a book that's for young adults, and for me, because I am very much not a young adult, I am chopped and unk. Um, I'm not like the target demographic, so I'm probably gonna like not vibe with the writing style as much. But I do find that in Frida BK Mire's books, she doesn't spoon feed people. Like she will leave little clues, for her readers to infer. She won't like explain everything. She won't over explain everything. She'll leave things for you to kind of work out yourself. at least at first, and then once kind of all the puzzle pieces are put together, she'll maybe nudge you in the right direction. There is a Sherlock reference at the end of this book, for example, and because it's at the very end of the book, I am not going to go too much into details because spoilers. Um, but there's a Sherlock reference that leads to like a big clue about what happens to one of the characters at the end of the book. And it took me a hot minute to like figure out what specific episode the reference was referring to. And it's like literally just for people who've watched Sherlock and have know what episode they're referring to and what happens in that episode. Um, and like only the Sherlock fans will get it. So yeah, I do really like the fact that you are kind of left to your own devices in this book. You kind of are given the chance to work things out for yourself and and think a bit, because I'm not gonna lie, I do think that like young adults, especially like, you know, they're in school, they're studying texts and stuff. I do find that they can have better critical thinking skills than a lot of adults I know. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I do like a book that doesn't underestimate a reader's intelligence for sure. I think if I had to give one criticism, I just wanted more from the book. Like compared to her other books, which are 500 plus pages long, this one is only 350 pages. And I felt like it could have been longer. I would have really liked more flashbacks to the prodigy's childhoods, more examples of like what the button method actually entailed, specific to each character, that kind of shaped them into the person they are and like how they cope with the pressure, like as individuals, how they do it differently as well as like collectively, if you know what I mean. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't think wanting to read more of any book is like necessarily a harsh criticism, even if it left me a little bit unsatisfied by the end. Um, I I don't know. I just like I wanted more. I really loved the world that she created in this book and all of the characters, and yeah, I just wanted to dwell on it. I didn't want it to end. So overall, it's a great book. It's really good whodunit, kind of a mixture between like Knives Out, especially the first Knives Out, and Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. Um, yeah, it's great for any fellow burnt out gifted kids. This is one for you. I really enjoyed it, and it comes out next month in July. It'll probably already be out by the time this video is uploaded. So yeah, pick it up. It's great. In terms of other books, I think I'm now around about 20% of the way through Better Than Revenge, maybe. Um, I'm enjoying it so far, definitely. It took me a hot minute to like fully get into it, but I am enjoying it. It's one of those books that like has a main character who is quite unpleasant, but at the same time you're still like rooting for her somehow. Um, yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. And then in terms of like physical copies, I am going to make a start on this book, The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. I'm really excited about this because I haven't read any Ocean Vuong before, but I have heard nothing but good things about his writing. And this is quite a large, chunky, intimidating book. So it might take me a while. It might be a while until I give you another update about this book. But I'm going to make a start on it. Very exciting. And yeah, I will see you when I see you. So I have literally just finished reading Better Than Revenge by B. Fitzgerald. You guys, she's done it again. B. Fitzgerald continues to churn out banger after banger after banger. I would literally read her grocery list if she published it. Honestly, like, it's great. I got an arc of this book on NetGalley, and I'm really, really grateful. Of course, the book comes out next month. It will probably already be out by the time this video comes out. So, yeah. So most people know B. Fitzgerald for her Greek myth retellings for young adults, and those are so good, incredible. She has another one coming out later this year, which is an Ariadne retelling, and I'm so excited. But she also writes thrillers for adults. Um, she wrote a couple of years ago a book called Then Things Went Dark, which is so good. It's like a murder mystery and a reality TV show. So many really unlikable characters. It's so fun. This one kind of along similar lines in that it talks about kind of show business and um like the court of public opinion and stuff like that. But we are in this world of Hollywood and actresses and celebrities. It's set in the 90s to the early 2000s. We follow an infamous rivalry between two women, Nadine Hayward and Harper Moore. These are two actresses who have been competing with each other since drama school, and that competition is fierce. They are constantly using more and more underhanded methods to ruin each other's lives, to try and get as many awards as they can, try and get as many good parts in films as they can. Um, yeah, it's like the biggest cat fight ever, and they're just like obsessed with each other. You know the Taylor Swift song "Actually Romantic," about how allegedly Charlie XCX was like talking bad about Taylor Swift so much that it was like kind of strange how obsessed she was. It's like that. They are so obsessed with each other um that they will literally just be thinking about each other all the time and how to like next ruin each other's lives. Um so it's like no wonder when that rivalry turns into something else. Oh, and also there's a body they need to hide as well, in the second half of the book. Yeah, their rivalry gets a death count. It's great. I really loved the world that B. Fitzgerald created in this book. It really evoked the the corruption and the toxicity of 90s show business and Hollywood. Um, like paparazzi are everywhere, everyone's so invasive, reputation is everything. The best strategy for a celebrity, the best form of defense, is to spin the narrative in their favor, even if that narrative isn't entirely true. The way the book is told is you have like transcripts of interviews um, with various characters from the story, looking back at that time and telling their own side of the story, what they think happened from their point of view. And then you have that interspersed with what really happened according to Nadine. The prose is so well written. Um, there are some lines that genuinely, like, when I read them, I had to put the book down and stare at the wall because they were just so gorgeous. I thought the relationship between Nadine and Harper was so fun to read. Like it really does take obsession and pettiness to the next level. And when the realization hits that that hatred for each other has somehow turned into something else born of a similar passion, like I was kicking my feet and giggling. Like this is the rivals lover story we need. I did really enjoy the fact that neither character is especially likable. As I said, they're very, very petty and they do several things that are quite irredeemable to each other. Um, but honestly, that does just make them perfect for each other. The fact that they are both equally not great people, but at the same time, they're really fun to read about. And I was still rooting for them and their relationship. I would definitely say that this book is like the love child of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and If We Were Villains. Like it's got the same kind of vibes of like that kind of fictionalized Hollywood world, as well as the whole like potentially covering up a murder storyline. Um, and it's also incredibly sapphic. If I had to give like one very, very minor criticism, I do think that while there is a lot of discussion about how women are very easily judged by the press and media and public opinion, and it's very easy to put a negative spin on them, it's very easy to complain about them. Like, there is a lot of discussion about like sexism in Hollywood, right? Like, if a woman makes a mistake in public and it's like the smallest thing, they could very easily have their lives ruined because of that if public opinion turns on them. And it's much more likely for that to happen to a woman than it is to a man. Like, a man can get away with a lot more stuff. I also think there should have been more discussion about racism in Hollywood, because Harper is mixed race, and she does, I think, once mention the fact that because she is mixed race, it means that she is never going to get cast in a period drama because it's the 2000s and like Hollywood is racist. But I also think there should have been more discussion about how that aspect of her identity also affects her perception by media, by the press, by the public, and how that could potentially lead to her being judged more harshly than, say, Nadine, who is white. I don't know, I feel like there could have maybe been a little bit more nuance with that particular discussion, as well as the discussion of sexism in Hollywood, which I thought was really good. But overall, I love this book. Genuinely one of my favorite books I've read so far this year. It was so good. So good. That is Better Than Revenge by B. Fitzgerald, my absolute fave. It comes out next month. It will probably already be out by the time this video comes out, as I said. So yeah, go and read it, please. It's so good. I actually still have not started The Emperor of Gladness yet because I really wanted to finish Better Than Revenge by the end of this week, which I have done now. So I will actually make a start on this now. And yeah, I will let you know my thoughts when I'm done. Hello, I'm back. No, I have not finished The Emperor of Gladness yet, although I have started reading it. I very quickly discovered that it's going to be one of those books where, like, I'm going to have to pace myself, because the prose is so dense. It's beautiful, but it's so dense that I physically, like, it's not a book that you can rush, really. I actually have to like sit down and properly parse what's going on, so that I can fully understand and appreciate it. So, um, yeah, I'm reading it over quite a few days. Maybe about 100 pages through so far. Um, and I've decided to like read a few other books alongside it, as well. And one of those books is a book that I have literally just finished, and that is an arc of Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. I love Chuck Tingle. I really vibe with this stuff. Bury Your Gaze, which was the first book of his that I read, was actually like the book that properly turned me on to horror, and specifically queer horror. And yeah, it's so good, so fun. So this particular book is a slasher. It's set in Palm Springs. It follows a woman called Poppy, who is a single mom, and she's an influencer. She does like fashion and lifestyle stuff. Um, Lives in like a massive house, and basically like sells her lifestyle. But because the algorithm doesn't always pay the bills, she also moonlights as a black market corpse dealer. She goes and steals corpses and sells them to people on the black market, and that actually like pays the bills, most of the bills. Anyway, the story starts basically when she is offered the deal of a lifetime. Her favorite music artist, it's like a rock star from like the 80s and 90s, and it's kind of described as like the US's answer to Elton John, as in like he's a queer idol. Um, Very cool. He's just died in like a freak accident, and she has been offered a lot of money to go and steal his body. But when this body comes back to life, Poppy is essentially held hostage in a gruesome road trip through Palm Springs that leaves a lot of other bodies in its wake. And the book is essentially told over the course of that one night. It's not very long. It's like 200 pages long, and it's told over the course of one single night. So like the tension is always really high. Um, there's action always happening. You don't really get much of a break to like catch your breath, which I think for a horror book is really good. It's really cool the way that like it keeps going, and the fact that Chuck Tingle continues to find new and original and increasingly graphic ways to kill characters off. Like it doesn't get boring. I feel like that it should get boring, but it doesn't get boring. I thought that Poppy was a really interesting protagonist. She is your typical like Palm Springs, California girl influencer. She's very self-centered. Um, she's got this very kind of fixed idea of like standards in terms of beauty. Um, she claims that everything that she does is to ensure that her daughter gets a good life, like the childhood that she never got because she grew up in the care system. And that's why she does what she does. That's why she's a bit of a workaholic, both in terms of like the influencing and also in terms of like the stuff that she does on the side, her little side hustle of stealing corpses. And even though she believes that she's doing all of that for the benefit of her daughter, what her daughter actually wants is like spend quality time with her mother, and she doesn't really care if that's in a massive house with a massive pool or anything. And that's another thing that I really like about Chuck Tingle's novels is the fact that underneath all of that graphic violence and bloodshed, there is always a deeper message and a more wholesome message. And it's always about the importance of love and the importance of building strong and meaningful relationships with other people. In this book specifically, it is about the mother daughter bond, and that is what drives the book. And that's what gives meaning to all of this violence. It does feel weird to describe a horror book, especially a slasher with this much violence and bloodshed, as wholesome, but like it is kind of wholesome. So yeah, it's a fun little book. Like I read it over the course of 2 days, because I just did not want to put it down. Um, like it gets going and then just doesn't stop until the very end. I definitely get that it's not going to be for everyone. Would thoroughly recommend checking the content warnings before diving into it, as I would with like basically any book, but especially any horror book. There is a lot of violence that is very graphic, to the point where it does get pretty camp and unserious. Like, I feel like all of Chuck Tingle's books don't necessarily take themselves too seriously. But yeah, like the rest of the books, this one is quite unserious in the amount of violence that is packed in there. And if that's not something you're into, that is absolutely fine. I gotta say, there were definitely a few moments in the book that just kind of made me gag a little bit, and not in like a good way, as in like I'm gagged, gooped and gagged. More in like a I kind of feel a little bit physically ill right now. So yeah, the book is definitely not for everyone. But I personally quite enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It was entertaining. So I'm gonna continue on with The Emperor of Gladness. I'm probably gonna pick up one other book to read alongside it as well. Haven't decided which one. Um, so yeah, don't know when I'm next gonna have an update for you, but whichever book I end up finishing next, um, yeah, I'll let you know my thoughts. Hi, hello. It's been a few days. It's been an entire weekend. Had a bit of a mad weekend actually. Went to see Harry Styles in concert at Wembley. It was so cool. So cool. And yeah, I've just been recovering physically, mentally, and emotionally from that. But I have managed to read 2 books this weekend, so let's talk about those. So I did actually finish The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. It took me a while because I did pace myself with this book. It is a literary fiction book set in this small dead end town of East Gladness, Connecticut. And we follow a boy who's called High, and he is about to jump off of a bridge in this town when he hears someone calling out to him, calling out to tell him to get off the bridge, get off the edge. And the voice belongs to an old woman who's called Grazina. And she basically takes him in, gives him a place to live in her home in exchange for him essentially becoming her carer, because she is dying from Alzheimer's, from dementia. And so he's there to like make sure that she takes her medication and kind of bring her down whenever she kind of goes into like a flashback or a spiral or anything. So there's this unlikely cross generational friendship. There's found family in the form of this ragtag group of staff at a fast food place that High starts working at. Um, there's an immersive setting. Like, the town of East Gladness is rendered so vividly that I genuinely could see myself walking through it alongside High, despite the fact that like I've never been to the States. It really did feel like I'd visited the place myself. Like, that is so cool. The characters and the relationships are all so complex and real. Like, all of the characters were flawed and three-dimensional, so well written. Um, you couldn't really kind of idolize any of them, put them on a pedestal, because they all had issues, but at the same time they all had like quirks and stuff that made them endearing, um, which was really nice. The writing is beautiful, if a little too dense at times. I was right to pace myself while reading this book, because it's the kind of book that you really need to sit with and absorb via osmosis. And also, I would definitely check the content warnings before starting this book. It does talk about a lot of quite serious issues in a lot of detail. There are issues surrounding uh, death, grief, of family members, of friends, um, discussions around mental health and addiction and suicide. There is actually one particular chapter that contains some very graphic subject matter, that almost turned me off the book. It was like starting to make me feel a little bit physically ill. Um, but I hung in there. I hung in there. But I probably should have checked the content warnings before reading, just in case, just so that like I was prepared emotionally for it. But I did really enjoy this. Like, sometimes it does feel really rewarding to read outside of your comfort zone, read something that's a little more literary than you tend to read, something that does actually require a lot of brain power to get through. So, yeah, that is The Emperor of Gladness. And then as I was reading that book, I figured I needed something else to kind of balance it out, as it were, because like it's a heavy read and it did require a lot of thought, a lot of brain power to really kind of focus on it and absorb what was going on. So yeah, I wanted something to kind of contrast that, something more easy to read, something more kind of light, something a bit fluffier. So I read Heated Rivalry. Like, you literally could not think of two books that are more different in vibe. Because, like, for all I have complained about the Open Era in its kind of lack of similarity to Heated Rivalry, I realized that, like, I hadn't read the book and I hadn't watched the series. So, genuinely, I could have been talking out my ass for all I know. So, like, I did actually want to read the book just to kind of see what it was about, see what the hype was all about, see if I was actually justified in my criticisms of the Open Era. And also, I did take this book to the Harry Styles concert so that I could read it at the stadium, because I am that kind of person. I just thought it would be really funny to take Heated Rivalry to Wembley Stadium with me, just to, live out my YN fantasy for 5 minutes. Okay, so I feel like everyone knows
what this book is about by now, but in case you have been living under a rock, this book follows this decade long rivalry between two hockey stars who are like the best in the league. They're constantly competing for the top spot. You have Shane, who is he plays for Montreal, and then Ilya, who plays for Boston. And yeah, they have this decade long rivalry. And as well as it being quite heated on the ice, it also gets quite heated off the ice. And you guys, this is what I was talking about when I talk about a rivalry. Shane and Ilya are constantly bickering. They're constantly trying to beat each other at everything, not just hockey, but like literally everything. They do truly hate each other to begin with. And that makes it so much more rewarding when that hatred gradually transforms into a different but equally as passionate emotion. In terms of spice, there is a lot of it. But you know what? I was actually quite surprised at how tame it was. Like, in terms of what was actually happening in the spicy content. Like, there are a lot of spicy scenes, but I was kind of expecting to be scandalized in terms of what was actually going on, but I wasn't. Like, I've read worse. And I also really loved how slow burn the emotional story was, because like the spicy stuff happens very early on in the book. Like, there's a spicy scene in the prologue, literally. But in terms of like the actual emotional side of it, going from like enemies with benefits to actually liking each other romantically, that is something that happens gradually over the course of the book, over the course of years. And there is so much denial of feelings, there is so much mutual pining. Like, I was being fed. I was kicking my feet and giggling. And once again, because it's drawn out over so many years, it just makes it so much more rewarding when that tension is slowly, gradually building to a massive emotional climax. And yeah, oh my god, it's so good. So yes, it is tropey, it's cheesy, it's highly unrealistic, but it was so much fun. It's such an easy read, and it was honestly the perfect thing to balance out the heaviness of The Emperor of Gladness. I'm not sure if I could commit to reading the entire Game Changers series, because that is a lot of hockey romance. Um, but this was good. I enjoyed it. We are exactly halfway through the month now. We are at our halfway point. I can't remember off the top of my head how many books I've read so far. I think I've read quite a few. I do still have a few more books on my TBR that I want to get to this month, so I'm going to move straight on to Cynthia Erivo's book Simply More. This is one of the books that I had on my list of 26 books to read in 2026, so it's obviously on the top of the priority list. Um, and it's quite short, so I'm hoping I will bash this out quite quickly. I kind of want to finish it by the end of tomorrow, hopefully. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what quite to expect from this book, because I didn't even read the blurb. I literally, it was in the half price Waterstones Boxing Day sale, and I saw Cynthia Erivo on the front, and I was like, yes, you're coming home with me. So yeah, I'm going into this with a completely open mind, no idea what to expect, but hopefully I will enjoy it. So I should, fingers crossed, be back pretty soon with an update on what I thought. Hey, so it is literally the next day. I read the entirety of this book yesterday. Yeah. So this is Simply More by Cynthia Erivo. This book is part memoir, part self-help book. It's about her growing up, becoming a full-time performer, overcoming the barriers that were in front of her because of her race, class, sexuality.
getting her big break and coping with the massive changes to her life that happened as a result. And that is combined with various life lessons that she has learned and how we can apply those to our own lives. For me personally, I was a lot more interested in the memoir aspect of the book. I already admire Cynthia immensely for her talent and how she carries herself. But reading the book really made me admire her lifelong work ethic. The fact that she knows her worth and what she can do, and she's never stopped working and seeing where opportunity can take her. I also really like her mindset and the way she thinks with such mindfulness and always strives to be fully present for everything that happens to her and around her. In terms of like the self-help life lessons part of the book, there wasn't really anything special or new to it. It was kind of a lot of rehashing what any book on mindfulness will tell you. But I will say that she does put it into words really well, really eloquently. There are definitely moments when the messaging gets a little condescending, maybe. I don't know. She is sometimes like, just work hard, keep trying, stay true to yourself, and look at where that got me. And I'm definitely paraphrasing that, but it's kind of what the messaging felt like at times. It's just sometimes like, follow this advice, ask these questions of yourself, and who knows what might happen. And I'm like, okay, but also you are Cynthia Erivo. Like, yes, she has had to contend with a lot of obstacles that come with being a working class black queer woman in the performing arts industry, but she is also insanely talented and also really, really lucky. It only took a couple of chance meetings and being in the right place at the right time for her to get her big break that changed everything. And that actually happens quite a lot in the performing arts industry. It is just a matter of luck and being in the right place at the right time. So I don't know, maybe I'm just being very cynical. And look, I'm definitely not downplaying the work that she's had to put in, especially like at the start of her career. She did work incredibly hard to get where she is now. But it is the kind of feeling I get when any A-list celebrity tries to give meaningful, relatable, applicable advice. Like, they're all the way up here and the rest of the population is all the way down here. And I don't know, it just feels a little bit out of touch. That said, I still found the book interesting. It was very cool to read about her methods when it comes to auditioning and performing. So, like, it was still worth the read. It was still interesting, definitely. But yeah, that is Simply More. I'm going to move straight on to You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. This is like a completely different vibe because this is horror. It's like sci-fi kind of vibes. I just take a moment to appreciate the edges of this book. So cool. So yeah, I think this book is like 300 pages long. I'm kind of aiming to finish it relatively soon because I'm going away for the weekend this weekend, and I'm only going to be taking my Kindle with me because luggage, which has a couple of arcs that I need to read this month on it. So I'm going to be doing that, and I kind of want to finish this book before the weekend happens, because otherwise I will literally just forget what is going on when I come back to it. So yeah, hopefully I'll finish this relatively soon, and yeah, I will let you know what I think. A little bit scared actually. I am a fan of horror. I like horror, but I don't know. This is about like bugs and worms and creepy crawlies and body horror and stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. Hi, I'm gonna try and be relatively quick because I need to leave the house like really soon because I'm going away for the weekend. So I have finished You Were Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. This is a book set in a dystopian near future where the USA has become even more right wing and totalitarian than it already is. In Appalachia, there are a collection of hives of bugs and worms that are so large that they have basically gained sentience, and they're taken care of by essentially a cult who do everything that they ask. So, our main guy is called Crane. He's a non-verbal autistic trans man who was taken in by this cult where he was allowed to transition, and he never has to like speak again. But now he is pregnant, and the hive is forcing him to keep the baby. It looks at pregnancy as monstrosity in its ability to transform a body and mind into something completely unrecognizable. It looks at how people can feel trapped by a government that undermines their rights, and they can be driven to do desperate and destructive things to themselves and others. I am pretty conflicted about this one actually, because while I didn't hate it, this book is just so fucked up. There are so many awful things that happen, mostly to Crane, and literally as soon as you think you've seen the worst of it, it turns out that was just pregame for the next round of even more terrible stuff. I think calling it trauma porn would not be an accurate statement, because it's definitely a lot more complex than that. And I also don't think anything is done for shock value, because there's always a reason for the things that happen. And actually, you do start to kind of get desensitized to all of the gore and violence to the point where things don't really shock you anymore, which in itself is quite messed up. That's not great. So, yeah, there is definitely like a reason. There's reasoning behind all of the awful stuff that happens. But that definitely doesn't mean the book is enjoyable, because it's rough. It is rough. So while I did not particularly enjoy the reading experience, I am glad that I read it. I thought the characters were really interesting. Like they are all so messed up in their own ways, and they've all been failed by the system in various ways that have kind of led them to this cult and to do all these terrible things. And the relationships between all of these people as well were really interesting as well. Like it's not it's very much not found family. It's not like a kind of happy vibes that kind of all brought together. Like they're literally living together, existing together out of necessity, out of survival. And they they don't like each other, but they also have this kind of grudging respect for each other, if that makes sense. I definitely don't think that this book should have been my introduction to Andrew Joseph White's writing, because talk about jumping in at the deep end. This is like the friggin' Mariana Trench over here. Please, for the love of God, read the content warnings. If you are thinking about reading this book, look at the content warnings. It's yeah, don't go in blind. It's not for the faint of heart or the faint of stomach. I do have a copy of Hell Followed With Us, which I believe is geared towards a slightly younger audience. So maybe it would be a little bit more tame. Maybe I should have started with that book. Maybe it was a mistake to jump in with this one. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that, because I do like Andrew Joseph White's writing style. It is so visceral. I think, yeah, visceral is the perfect word to describe it. Like, it doesn't sugarcoat anything, which is exactly what you want in a horror book, I feel. And it was also really interesting reading about a character whose perspective I haven't really seen in a book before. Definitely not as like the main character, like a non-verbal autistic trans man. And I believe the author used a lot of his kind of experiences as autistic and transgender to like inspire the character of Crane, which is really interesting. But also makes me feel really bad for the author as well, because like Crane is not having a good time at all. So yeah, that is You Weren't Meant to Be Human. Yeah. I feel like it's not really a coincidence that I had a really weird, messed up nightmare last night.
After reading this book, I feel like it infiltrated my brain somehow. So yes, I am going away for the weekend. I'm bringing my Kindle with me. I don't know how much time I'm going to like actually have to read. I do. I'm spending about like 3.5 hours maybe on a train today, in total. So I should theoretically get some reading done. I have a couple of arcs that I need to read by the end of this month. Um, so yeah, maybe I might have a review or two to update you with when I get back. But yeah, that's it for now, I guess, and I will see you at some point in the future. Hi, it's been a while. Um, I went away for the weekend and we got hit with the fattest heat wave of all time. Um, so I've been trying to wait until it got a little bit cooler so that I could record in slightly more comfortable temperatures. Um, but that's not happening anytime soon, so I'm just going to suffer. So it has been a few days, and I did say that I had a couple more arcs left to read this month, and I have read a couple more arcs. So yeah, I'm going to talk about them relatively quickly, so that I don't overheat. So, firstly, I read an arc of Canon by Paige Lewis. This book is essentially a queer retelling of the biblical song of Deborah, but just from like reading the book, you wouldn't really be able to tell that because it is quite far removed from the original source material as far as I am aware. You definitely don't need any prior Bible knowledge to read the book, is what I'm trying to say. So, the book follows two prophets. You have Yara, who is a non binary teen who has been chosen by God to slay the leader of the bad guys. And that's literally what this kind of opposing army is called. They're called the bad guys, which does sound like a really arbitrary term, and there is a reason for that. And then you also have Adrena, who is another prophet who is determined to prove to God that she is the worthy hero of the story instead. It's a super absurdist and weird story that seems to be suspended in space and time. There are parts of the story that belong in the 90s, and even the narrator says that it is probably set in the 90s. But there are also parts of the story that feel very anachronistic, like the battles being fought on horseback and with swords and shields. In fact, the final battle is a clear parody of the Iliad, and I really vibe with that, obviously. I really liked how the book discussed deeper issues around pollution and shame and identity and religion, how devoting yourself to a certain person or cause without question can cause more damage than good. The book has a really good balance between being lighthearted and kooky and also really making you think, which I really liked. The narration is really witty and it jumps between various different characters and it even breaks the fourth wall frequently. I was definitely getting big Terry Pratchett vibes, big Olivia Blake vibes while I was reading. I do think that the book could have been significantly shorter. It does drag, especially in the first half, I'd say. There are a lot of moments that could be considered no plot, just vibes. The vibes are great. I'm definitely like not saying the vibes are bad or boring, but I don't know. I just feel like maybe about 100 pages could have been taken out of the book. The book is like nearly 500 pages long, for reference. 100 pages could have been dropped, and the impact of the book, the message of the book, would remain and maybe even become a little bit more potent because of that. But it was still an entertaining read and quite unlike anything that I have read before. It's full of colorful characters, absurd, weird, crazy situations. I would probably describe it as like if Good Omens was about 500% more gay. So that is Canon by Paige Lewis, and it will already be out by the time this video is uploaded. So yeah, go read it. And then the other arc that I have also read since the last time we spoke was Mossed in Space by Rebecca Thorne. I love the title. I love a pun. So I got this proof sent to me by Tor, by Book Break, Pan Macmillan. Super, super grateful. Tor really does spoil me. I feel they have spoiled me in the last few months, for sure. So, this book is a cozy space adventure about a young woman who spends her life savings on a derelict alien spaceship so that she can take her dying sister to a different planet that might save her life. However, she soon discovers that the overgrown moss throughout the ship is actually a sentient organic computer with severe separation anxiety. Isn't that a fantastic concept? I love that. I was getting such strong Becky Chambers Wayfarers vibes from this book. Everything from the extensive world building to incorporating real life issues like elitism and classism in a futuristic context, to the original and unique alien designs, to the found family. There's so much found family. You can pack so much found family inside this book. I finished the final book in the Wayfarers series 6 months ago, and I had been dragging that out for ages and ages because I didn't want that series to end. And I have been thinking about that series every day. I'm not even exaggerating, every day since then. So I'm really glad that there is a potential spiritual successor in this new series. There are some really funny moments in this book. I particularly enjoyed the parts that were told from Moss's point of view. Moss is like the organic computer, it's just called Moss because it is Moss. Its narrative voice is so blunt and grumpy, but also you can tell that behind that facade is a real vulnerable computer who just wants friends. There is a little romance subplot that is sapphic, and it is a second chance romance. It's cute. I thought it was cute, but I do remember reading This Gilded Abyss by Rebecca Thorne. I think it was last year that I read it. Um, and it also has a second chance romance. And from what I can remember of that book, the dynamic between the two love interests just felt so similar. It was almost like a carbon copy. And I do also think there could have been some more high stakes moments. Like, I get that it's meant to be a cozy sci fi, but there was only really one vaguely tense moment towards the end that was resolved pretty quickly. Like, you didn't feel like any of the characters were in massive danger at any point. And I don't know, I just personally I want a bit more adventure in my space adventure books, you know? And finally, and I know this is super petty and boring of me, but I counted at least five, six, seven references in the book. And I say at least because I started properly counting when I noticed, I think, the third reference. So I could have definitely missed some before that. So yeah, there were at least five, which I think is at least five too many, if I'm being perfectly honest. I could just let that slide. I could just move on. But I had to mention it because really? Really? Anyway, despite my pretty minor and petty criticisms, I did still really enjoy the book. I think it's a good setup for what could potentially be a great series. I am excited to see what happens next in the series because this book does end on a pretty big cliffhanger, and from the sounds of it, I do feel like the next installment could have a bit more action, which I am definitely excited about. So, yeah, that is Lost in Space. Um, it might already be out by the time this video is out. I don't know. It comes out on the 9th of July. Is there a date on here? I don't think there's a date. It comes out on, I believe, the 9th of July. So, yeah, go read it. We are actually coming to the end of my physical TBR, which is good because we're close to the end of the month. So, I managed to actually space that out pretty well in terms of like how many books I thought I'd be able to read this month. So I'm gonna move straight on to Freshwater by Akweke Emezi. I'm already a fair amount into the book, like 60 pages maybe. It's not a particularly long one. From what I've read so far, it is very different to everything else I've read so far in this video, so that's pretty good. I have read a couple of other Kweke books in the past. I've read You Made a Fool of Death with Beauty. I read Little Rot. I really enjoyed both of those. Again, this seems to be like a quite different vibe to those books. So, yeah, I am interested to see where this goes. And again, I will feed back to you when I'm done with what I think. Hi, I'm back and I finished Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. I have read a couple of books by them before, which I really enjoyed. So I was quite excited going into this. I had quite high expectations. This is a book about the life of a girl, Ada, who houses Obanje within her. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but uh, they're like essentially Ebo spirits, and these spirits basically make her life a misery. And that's it, that's the book. It's a very interesting take on the intersection between medicine and spirituality, using Ebo cosmology to try and explain mental illness and trauma and neurodivergence and gender dysphoria. It's like the various aspects of Ada's heritage and identity are colliding. And like, no wonder she's having a bad time because it is pretty confusing. Akweke Emezi does have a gorgeous writing style. It's very lyrical, it's very poetic. There is actually a little bit of poetry in this book. It is nice that they clearly had this very distinct and well formed style, even from their debut. I also believe that this book is semi autobiographical, which does make it a little bit awkward to critique, because if it's based on the author's real experiences, then who am I to question that? But I'm going to critique it anyway. I do have a few criticisms. Firstly, I kind of struggle to fully understand the motives of the Obanje, particularly the main one, who's called Asugara, who's the one that fronts most often, to use a term prevalent in DID circles, because from a Western point of view, from a Western perspective, Ada does seem to have something akin to DID. Like, it's kind of a trauma response to massive traumas that happened in her childhood. And there is kind of something like a headspace. And when these spirits take over, it is kind of like fronting. It does sound a little bit like dissociative identity disorder. But anyway, from what I've read, Obanje are spirits that possess children from birth, basically, and lead them to an untimely death. And that does track with the times that Asugara and the other spirits want Ada to end her life. They harm her, they drive her to very self destructive behaviors and coping mechanisms. And yeah, there are scenes where basically Asugara is trying to persuade Ada to unalive herself. But there are also times when Asugara has this desire to protect Ada, and I do think that this is a genuine desire to protect her rather than just a manipulation tactic, by, for example, fronting during scenarios that might force her to relive past traumas, like sex. And there is a lot of graphic sex in the book. So, those two desires, both to protect and to destroy, really contrast each other in a way that's quite confusing. And maybe this is me just not getting the book, misreading it, misinterpreting it. But I think as a result, I just didn't really understand Asugara as a character. I didn't really know what her real motivations were. And that is quite frustrating because she is the most frequent narrator in the book. The book is also very character driven and introspective, which can be great, but in this case, it kind of means that everything else is kind of left as an afterthought. Like, we don't get a lot of information about a lot of Ada's romantic partners. Some of the men don't even get names. Her longtime girlfriend doesn't really get a description of her personality or appearance. She's just kind of there, basically. Her marriage begins and ends in a matter of pages, and there don't seem to be any kind of lasting consequences for her once it's over. I low-key kind of forgot that she was married in the first place. Like, I don't think we even see her husband again in the book once he is gone. We also don't get much information about her life outside of her, or rather, Asugara's love life. Like, she goes to college in the States to study, I think, biology. is mentioned once, maybe, but we don't get any more information about what that was like for her. We don't know what job she ended up with, and the book does take place over like decades, so she must have held down at least one job at some point during that time. It was just like her life revolved around the men that she dated, which A, isn't really the subject matter that I personally want to read. It's not really for me. And B, it kind of just felt a little bit uncomfortable to read because Ada is a character who has a lot of trauma around sex. And then Asugara is kind of driving her to hypersexuality as kind of a coping mechanism, I guess. But it's not even really Ada, it's just Asugara trying to live through her, which does feel quite uncomfortable to read when you think about like how Ada might be feeling about that. I don't know, it's kind of an uncomfortable subject matter, really. Overall, I think that the plot and the other characters could have been a lot more developed. They felt pretty underdeveloped, rather than just kind of focusing on the introspection and the self-destructive coping mechanisms, which was what most of the book really focused on. There was a lot of discussion of trauma. I don't think, again, like with You Weren't Meant to Be Human, I'm not going to call it trauma porn because I think it's a lot more complex than that, especially if it is inspired by real life events. But still, it really doesn't make for like feel good reading. This is feel bad reading, basically. This could definitely be an issue of me reading the book wrong or not understanding the nuances in Igbo culture and cosmology. I've done a little bit of reading, but like not much. So you can disagree with me if you want. You can call me ignorant and uninformed if you want. But my personal opinion is I think that while I love Akwaeke Emezi's writing, and that has been proven through the other books of theirs I've read, this one just wasn't for me. And that's okay. Not every book has to be for you. So, yeah. So while I didn't necessarily enjoy this book, I don't regret reading it. I'm glad that I did read it for sure. So, yeah, that is Freshwater. So, we are coming to the end of Pride Month, which is a good thing because we only really have time for one more book. And I only really have one book that I want to read. Actually, that's a lie. I have one book that I want to read, and then like 5 other books I want to reread, because I have here in front of me the entire Heartstopper series, apart from book 6, which isn't out yet. But it does come out in a few days, and I'm waiting ever so patiently for my pre-order to come in. So while I do that, I figured it would be really fun to reread the other 5 volumes, um, just to refresh my memory a little bit of what is going on. Um, and yeah, I'm going to do that. It shouldn't take me very long because they are graphic novels, despite how thick they are, some of them. Um, yeah, should not take me too long. And then I am going to read volume 6, the final volume in the series. I think I'm going to leave off my kind of final update until I do that. So this it's probably going to run over into July a little bit, depending on when my pre-order comes in. Um, but yeah, that's okay. Um, so this might be my last update for a few days, but I will see you at some point once I've read all of the books, and I will give you my thoughts. Um, and yeah, that's it basically. So I will see you at some point for a final little update. So my pre-order of Heartstopper Volume 6 finally arrived a day late, but it's fine. I read it in a single sitting, so yeah. This is Volume 6, the final volume in the Heartstopper series, which follows a group of teens going to school, falling in love, coming of age, figuring out their identities and stuff. I feel like the entire world knows about Heartstopper, so like I don't really need to explain it. But this is kind of the conclusion of everyone's stories, particularly Nick and Charlie. Nick is finishing school; he's heading off to university, and kind of dealing with the prospect of not being around Charlie every day, figuring out kind of who he is by himself. Um, Charlie is in the year below, so he's just started his A levels. He is um, in the running to be head boy and looking to kind of make changes at his school. And yeah, all their friends are also kind of coming to the end of their school years. It's kind of the end of an era, really. So yeah, it's a lot of different things going on in this book. I do think it was a really lovely send off for a series that has become so expansive. When I think about the first couple of volumes, um, when I was rereading them, I was kind of surprised at how kind of minimal they were in terms of like the storylines. It just really focused in on just Nick and Charlie with a little bit of kind of Tara and Darcy and Tao and Elle storylines as well, but it was mostly Nick and Charlie. And now we've kind of gotten to a point where the there are a lot more storylines, a lot more characters as well. And they're all really well developed as well. They're all having like various issues that, you know, teenagers have when they're growing up. Finding out who they are and what they want to do with their lives. I particularly love Nick's storyline in this one. Finally, kind of him coming to terms with everything that he's been repressing over the years. His tumultuous relationship with his dad and his brother, and how that has kind of molded him into the person that he is, and the issues that he has with like having to be perfect all the time in case people leave him, and like finally kind of opening up and asking for help. Like, I think that was such an important storyline to have. Like, there was a lot of focus on Charlie in volumes 3 and 4, really, especially. So it's nice that Nick has also had that space to, figure himself out as well. I do personally think that this volume could have been split into two. It's already pretty hefty. I think this is maybe the biggest volume in the series. It's well over 400 pages. Um, and as big as it is, the pacing was still very, very fast, and there were definitely parts of the book that felt rushed. Most of the plot, like kind of surrounding Charlie's bid for head boy and the kind of communication issues between him and Nick, that's all worked out in the first half of the book. And then the second half is full of time skips, marking significant events in like the next few months. And there's not like a massive amount of plot. It's mostly just kind of working out the various different characters' kind of endings of their arcs. And there were definitely parts of that, kind of the supporting cast, that felt kind of underdeveloped. Like, we were just kind of seeing kind of glimpses of them, and their endings. Like, for example, when we leave volume 5, um, Tara's still kind of set on like going straight to university, and we know that Darcy is going to be going on a gap year. And when we get to this volume, Tara has kind of suddenly done a 180. She's decided that she's going to go traveling with Darcy instead. And we never really find out how that decision was made, whether they like had discussion between them about like whether they could work out how to do long distance. Like, what was the process in that decision? And then we also have in this volume, and this is like minor spoilers, but at the same time, I feel like we all saw this coming. Darcy comes out as non-binary by asking Nick and Charlie to use they them pronouns for them, and that, I think it comes towards the end of the book, I want to say. And after that, there's not really the opportunity for anyone to do that. Like, there's a scene at a pride parade, and Darcy wears a t-shirt that references them being non-binary, but no one actually uses they them pronouns for them in the book, because there's not really the opportunity to do that. So again, it felt rushed, I want to say. I don't know, it's stuff like that, like kind of significant discussions with regards to the other characters' storylines. A lot of that happens off screen. Like there are references to a discussion that Tara and Darcy have about Darcy's gender, but again, that happens off of the page. I don't know. I think I was kind of missing in this book more of the collective development of the characters as an ensemble cast. I think that's one of the main reasons why volume 3 is my favorite volume out of the entire series, because there really is that kind of collective large cast of characters kind of feeling in that volume, where all the characters get to make an appearance and they get to kind of have development in their arcs that is shown on the page. Whereas in this volume, yes, the characters all turn up, but they're kind of, I guess, already at the place where they've arrived at, and we don't see their journeys, you know? I don't know. I get that Alice Oseman is probably quite ready for this series to be over so that, they can work on other projects, Um, I do think there could have been easily potential for 2 volumes of content that was better paced and had more of kind of an ensemble feel, you know? But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy what we got, because what we got was super wholesome and cute, and it had like nice throwbacks to um the previous volumes, and yeah, it was still good. It was still good. I do feel like with a series that is as beloved as the Heartstopper series, I do feel like you're not going to be able to please everyone when you bring a series like that to an end. Like you can't make everyone happy. You're gonna have to like let some things go, you know? So yeah, that is Heartstopper Volume 6. And that is the last book that I'm reading for this challenge. We're now like well into July, so yeah. Shall we take a look at the books that I read this month? I'm looking at this pile that I've made, and it's a big one. Okay, this is really heavy. Ta-da! It's like it barely fits on the in the frame. There we go. Here are all the physical books I read. I read a few other ebooks. I'm gonna put this down because it's like super heavy. So yeah, I would definitely say that this was a pretty successful month in terms of reading. Yeah, I read a lot of books. My favorite book I read this month was, of course, Better Than Revenge by B. Fitzgerald. Who's surprised? Who's surprised about that? Not me. But yeah, I read quite a range of quite different books this month. So yeah, lots of books. Thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you got to the end of it. I don't know how long this video is going to end up being. I have been editing as I go along because that makes the final task of editing a lot less daunting. And it's wound up at nearly an hour and a half at the moment in terms of like final footage. So yeah, it's a long one. So yeah, if you made it to the end and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. I do have a lot more stuff planned for the rest of this year. I've got my final installment of reading through the Women's Prize still to come. I also want to do a themed month for Women in Translation Month in August. And yeah, a few more kind of themed challenges and recommendation videos and all that stuff. So yeah, stay tuned. And you can also find me on various other platforms. My username is @withlivjones on TikTok, Instagram, Storygraph. Yeah, go find me on there, I guess. Thanks so much again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.